Have you ever noticed how people only seem to miss you when you pull away? One minute, they're treating you like an option, distant, indifferent, even taking you for granted. Then suddenly, the moment you stop reaching out, the moment you stop being available, everything changes. They start craving your attention. They check in unexpectedly. They act as if they've just realized your worth. Why is that? What makes someone suddenly see your value only after you've stepped back? Most people assume it's a coincidence or that the other person had a change of heart, but that's not the real reason. The truth is, this reaction follows a predictable pattern, one deeply rooted in human psychology. It's not about them suddenly appreciating you. It's about what distance does to perception. See, when something is always there, it becomes invisible. When you were constantly present, constantly available, they assumed you always would be. Your kindness, your presence, your energy, it became expected, not appreciated. But the moment you step away, you disrupt that expectation. Your absence creates a void they never considered before, and in that void, they begin to realize what they lost. But here's the most important part. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate someone into wanting you back. This is about mastering yourself, learning when to walk away, when to set boundaries, and when to reclaim your power. Today, we're diving deep into 7 powerful reasons why pulling away makes them come running back, all through the lens of Stoic wisdom, a philosophy that teaches us emotional control, self-worth, and the power of detachment. But before we begin, remember this. This isn't just about them, it's about you. This isn't about waiting for someone to realize your worth, it's about realizing it yourself. Because when you do, you won't just regain control over your relationships, you'll regain control over your entire life. So, are you ready? Let's get into it. Giving someone space isn't about tricking them into wanting you back, it's about rediscovering your own worth. Too often, people stay in situations where they feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. They give endlessly, hoping that one day, the other person will wake up and recognize their value. But here's the hard truth. People don't appreciate what is always available. When you pull away, something powerful happens. You shift the power dynamic. You stop seeking validation and start standing in your own self-worth. Instead of trying to convince someone of your value, you let them feel what it's like without you in their life. This shift isn't just about relationships. It applies to friendships, family, and even professional settings. The more you chase something, the more it runs. The more you overextend yourself, the less people see your effort as valuable. But the moment you step back, it forces them to confront a reality they never considered. What if you're no longer there? What if the person who always checked in, always made time, always supported them, just stops? Suddenly, they feel the absence of your energy, and that realization is more powerful than words. It makes them reflect, not because you told them to, but because they now feel the void you left behind. That's why distance is so powerful. It's not just about them missing you. It's about you proving to yourself that you were never the one who needed to fight for their attention in the first place. And now, it's time to dive deeper. Let's break it all down with reason number 1. People take consistency for granted. They assume you'll always be the same, always available, always reaching out, always putting in the effort. And because of that, they stop appreciating you. But what happens when you stop being predictable? What happens when the person they thought they had all figured out suddenly changes? The moment you stop chasing them and start chasing your own growth, it shakes them. It disrupts the comfort they had in knowing you'd always be there. Because now, they're forced to reevaluate everything they assumed about you. Imagine this. For months, maybe even years, you've been the one who always checked in, always made plans, always showed up. You were consistent, reliable, even when they weren't. And they got used to that. They got comfortable with the idea that no matter how they treated you, you'd always be around. Then one day, you stop. You're no longer sending those texts. You're no longer waiting around for them. And instead of focusing on them, you're focusing on yourself. You're hitting the gym, getting in the best shape of your life. You're advancing in your career, setting bigger goals, making moves. You're spending time with people who genuinely value and uplift you. Suddenly, the version of you they once knew no longer exists. And that shocks them. They start wondering, wait, why aren't they reaching out? Why do they seem so different? What changed? And here's the Stoic twist. You're not doing this to make them miss you. You're not growing to prove a point. You're growing because that's what life is about. You finally understand that your worth was never tied to how much effort you put into someone who didn't reciprocate. Your worth was never dependent on whether or not they recognized it. And that realization, it makes you unstoppable. Because once you shift your focus to your own growth, you no longer care whether they notice or not. But the irony, they always do. And that's when the dynamic changes. Because now, instead of you trying to fit into their world, they're realizing they may no longer have a place in yours. Let's move on to reason number 2. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who doesn't need external validation. In a world where most people are constantly seeking approval, clinging to social media likes, and measuring their worth based on how others perceive them, true self-sufficiency is rare. And anything that's rare becomes valuable. Most people operate from a place of emotional dependency. They look for validation from others to feel worthy, constantly needing reassurance that they matter. But when you break free from that cycle, when you reach a place where your happiness is entirely self-created, everything changes. You stop depending on their attention to feel good about yourself. You exude quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't beg to be noticed but can't be ignored. You become rare in a world full of people who need constant validation. And that shift, they feel it. At first, they might brush it off, thinking you're just going through a phase. But as time goes on, they realize something unsettling. You don't need them anymore. And that realization shakes them, because as long as you needed them, they had power over you. They could control how you felt, dictate your emotions, and keep you coming back whenever it suited them. But now, you've reclaimed your power. The Stoic mindset shift. Stoicism teaches us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We imagine that we need someone's approval to feel valuable. We convince ourselves that if they don't recognize our worth, then maybe we don't have any. But you don't need them to tell you who you are. You already know. And when they see that shift, when they realize that your happiness, your confidence, and your success are no longer dependent on them, they start craving your presence. Not because you're playing games, not because you're trying to make them miss you, but because they can no longer control it. And that's where everything flips. Now, instead of you chasing them, they're wondering how to get back into your world. Let's move on to reason number 3. Human nature is wired for loss aversion. We fear losing something far more than we desire gaining something new. Think about it. When we have something, we take it for granted. We assume it will always be there. But the moment we lose it, suddenly its value skyrockets. And that's exactly what happens when you pull away. At first, they might not even notice. Maybe they assume you'll be back, like you always were. But as time passes, something shifts. They start to feel your absence, and that absence creates scarcity. And here's the thing about scarcity. What's rare becomes valuable. Before, you were always there, offering emotional support, making time for them, checking in, showing up. You were a consistent presence in their life, whether they appreciated it or not. But now, you're gone. And suddenly, they feel the difference. They miss the emotional support you provided, the way you listened, understood, and uplifted them. They miss the attention you used to give them, because now they realize that no one else sees them the way you did. They miss your energy, the warmth, the comfort, the stability that came with knowing you were always there. Then the memories start replaying in their head, the deep conversations, the inside jokes, the moments they barely noticed at the time, but now can't stop thinking about. But here's the truth. By the time they realize your worth, you've already moved forward. You're no longer waiting for them to recognize what they had. You're no longer standing still, hoping they'll come back. Because while they're stuck in the past, you're too busy creating a future without them. And that's when they panic. Because now they don't just miss you, they fear that someone else is going to recognize your worth before they do. And that's a wake-up call they never saw coming. Let's move on to reason number 4. Predictability kills attraction. When someone can predict your every move, they stop paying attention. They get comfortable. They assume they've already figured you out. And the moment they stop wondering about you, they stop valuing you. Think about it. Why do people chase mystery? Why do we obsess over unanswered questions, hidden meanings, and unpredictable outcomes? Because our brains are wired to seek answers. We crave what we don't fully understand. Now let's apply that to relationships. When they knew you'd always be there, they didn't have to think about it. They didn't have to question it. You were always available, always reaching out, always making the effort. And because of that, they stopped valuing you. But now you've disrupted that pattern. You're not texting first anymore. You're not reacting the way they expect. You're not making yourself an open book. And suddenly, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're doing, who you're with, or how you feel about them. And that uncertainty, it's powerful. Because now, they're the ones overthinking. They start asking themselves questions they never had to consider before. Wait, why aren't they reaching out? Are they seeing someone new? Did I misjudge them? Before, you were a fixed point in their life, always accessible, always predictable. But now, you're a question mark, and that's what makes them obsessed. This isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding human psychology. People crave what they can't fully understand. They chase what they can't fully have. And the irony? The moment you stop being predictable, they start making you a priority. Let's move on to reason number 5. Confidence isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's not about trying to prove your worth to others, showing off, or demanding attention. True confidence is something entirely different. It's quiet certainty, a deep, unshakable knowing of who you are, what you bring to the table, and what you deserve. It's walking into any situation without needing others to confirm your value, because you already know it. And the moment you embrace that, everything changes. See, when you were too available, they didn't appreciate it. They assumed you'd always be there. They took your kindness, your energy, your time for granted. Not because they're bad people, but because they never had to question whether or not you'd stick around. But now you've stopped seeking validation from them. You've pulled your energy back, and instead of looking for their approval, you've started investing in yourself. And that shift, it's magnetic. You no longer wait for their attention. You're too focused on your own life. You no longer react to their breadcrumbs. You've outgrown the need for external validation. You no longer try to prove your worth. You let your presence, or absence, speak for itself. And here's the irony. When you were chasing them, they weren't interested. When you stop seeking them, they start seeking you. Why? Because confidence is rare, and people are naturally drawn to what is rare. When you were too accessible, they knew they had you. There was no challenge, no uncertainty, no fear of loss. But now that you've stepped back, now that you're no longer putting them on a pedestal, they feel the difference. They start wondering, wait, why don't they care as much anymore? Why do they seem so much more attractive now? Did I make a mistake? And suddenly the dynamic shifts, because now you're not just attractive to them, you're attractive to everyone. Confidence radiates, it commands respect, it changes the way people see you. And most importantly, it changes the way you see yourself. Because by the time they finally realize your worth, you'll have already known it all along. Let's move on to reason number 6. You're evolving. You're no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer placing your happiness in someone else's hands. Instead, you're building a new life, one that excites you, fulfills you, and makes you better. You've picked up new hobbies, things you've always wanted to do but never made time for. You've started new experiences, traveling, meeting new people, embracing challenges. You've developed new energy, a confidence, a sense of purpose, a momentum that wasn't there before. And here's the thing, people notice change. Even if you're not flaunting it, even if you're just living your life authentically, that shift is visible. It shows up on social media, in the photos, the activities, the glow in your presence. It spreads through mutual friends, people who casually mention how well you're doing. It radiates through your energy, because when you're truly happy, people can feel it. And this is where something interesting happens. They start feeling like they're missing out. At first, they might ignore it, thinking it's temporary, but then they see you thriving, moving forward, becoming a new and improved version of yourself. And a dangerous thought creeps into their mind. What if someone else sees their value before I do? What if someone else steps in and recognizes what they overlooked? What if someone new gets to experience the version of you that they never fully appreciated? That's when regret sets in, because now they're not just missing you, they're afraid of losing you forever. And the irony? While they were busy figuring out their feelings, you were too busy becoming the best version of yourself to even notice. Let's move on to reason number 7. The biggest wake-up call for someone who took you for granted? Realizing you're no longer waiting for them. At first, they might have assumed you'd always be there, waiting, hoping, holding space for them. They might have even thought that if they ever changed their mind, they could simply walk back into your life and you'd welcome them with open arms. But now, that illusion is shattered because they see you moving forward. They see you thriving. They see you living your best life without them. And suddenly it hits them. Someone else will see your value. Someone else will experience the kindness they took for granted, the patience they didn't appreciate, the love and energy they thought would always be reserved just for them. And this time, that person will appreciate it. That realization doesn't just sting, it terrifies them. Because now, they don't just fear losing you. They fear losing what they once had the chance to cherish. And here's the thing, this fear isn't just about jealousy, it's about regret. Regret for not seeing your worth when they had the chance. Regret for assuming you'd always be an option. Regret for realizing too late that someone else will now get the version of you they once took for granted. And the worst part for them? They can't do anything about it. Because by the time they realize their mistake, you've already outgrown the need for their validation. And that's when they feel the loss the most. But here's the truth. You never needed them to realize your worth because you've known it all along. And now, you're no longer looking back. Final thoughts. You didn't walk away to make them miss you. You walked away to find yourself. And in doing so, you became the person they now wish they had appreciated sooner. But the real question is, do you even care anymore? Let's wrap this up. But here's where I challenge you. Does it even matter if they come back? Up until now, we've talked about why people start craving you when you pull away, how your growth, your confidence, and your absence create a wake-up call they never expected. But the truth is, this was never about them. By the time they realize what they lost, you'll be too focused on your own journey to care. At the start, you were the one investing energy, waiting for their recognition, hoping they'd appreciate you. But then, you chose to step back, and in that single moment, everything shifted. You stopped chasing approval, you stopped seeking validation, you stopped making someone else the center of your world. And now, you're thriving. You've built a life that excites you. You've cultivated self-respect, self-worth, and self-sufficiency. You've realized that your happiness was never dependent on them. It was always in your hands. So whether they come back or not, you win. Because their return was never the goal. The goal was to become so deeply rooted in your own self-worth that it doesn't even matter anymore. And now, that's exactly where you are. So now that we've broken it all down, what's next for you? Because this isn't just about them. It's about you stepping into your power and realizing that you were never the one who needed to be chosen. You just needed to choose yourself. I want to hear your story. Have you ever had someone come back after you gave them space? How did it change the way you see yourself? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this message hit home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to let me know it helped you. Subscribe for more content that will push you to become your strongest, most unshakable self. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes all it takes is one perspective shift to change everything. And remember this. Your value isn't based on their recognition, it's based on how you see yourself. Now go out there, live in your worth, and never look back.